The Forsaken Zealots are a Chaos warband formerly known as the Enlightened. The Enlightened were a chapter created in the 21st founding, the so-called Cursed Founding. Though their origin is unknown, there were rumours their gene seed was a mixture of Ultramarines and Wordbearers. Due to this special composition, the Enlightened were a rigorous and zealous chapter, with somewhat unusual chapter beliefs. Unlike most other chapters, the Enlightened believed the God Emperor of mankind to be a godlike being, which is able to take on many forms. Even the gods of chaos would be a part of the many forms of the God Emperor. This belief eventually caused the chapter to be declared excommunicate traitoris. Now, they are known as the Forsaken Zealots, who operate from the Eye of Terror and seek to free the Imperium of its blinded faith. They use infiltration tactics and their many cultists to spread corruption and take control of entire worlds. Their dark fleet always on the hunt for weak prey. It's unknown how many worlds the Forsaken Zealots have taken since their declaration as heretics. The Enlightened chose Lustus as their homeworld. The civilization there was very religious and were honoured that the Sky Angels, as the Enlightened were called by them, descended upon the planet. The Enlightened would come down every 5 years to select potential new recruits. This was a task for the chaplains and apothecaries of the chapter. When the chaplains approved one of the boys, the apothecaries marked them. When new blood was needed, the chapter descended to claim their new recruits. Although it may seem harsh the way they treated their recruits, the people saw it as an honour. Not everyone had the right to become an angel of the great god, then named for the God Emperor of mankind. The monastery was placed upon one of the highest mountains of the world, and according to the stories, reached so high the top was covered by clouds. So this was not only a very defensible position, but due to the chapter's strange beliefs, they needed much space for all different chapels. To lead such a diverse chapter, a great leader had to be chosen. He had to be capable to make the chapter operate as one. Brabo Gracchus, captain of the First Company, seemed the perfect man for this position. He accepted the position of chapter master to lead his brothers to glory and victory. Gracchus appointed Zarias as chief chaplain of the chapter and keeper of the key to the relics, hidden within the Librarius. Everything seemed to go well, but no one knew that the seeds of heresy and their undoing had already been sown. Unlike most other chapters, the Enlightened believe the God Emperor of mankind is a god that can take on more than one form in his immortal state. With so many forms, the chapter believe it's up to the individual believer to choose which form he praises. This belief resulted in the chapter having many cults among the Space Marines and their monastery on Lustus having many separated chapels to harbour these cults. The role of the chaplains was very important since they spread this enlightened vision. This resulted in chaplains having greater power and outranking most officers within the chapter itself. Chief Chaplain Zarias was the most prominent figure in the chapter, and only accountability towards the chapter master himself. The chaplains were also responsible for prosecutions and declarations of heresy in and outside the chapter itself. Prosecutions of heretic were nihil, since faith could take on many forms. The Chaos Gods, however, were still seen as the only counterparts for the God Emperor. The Ecclesiarchy didn't agree with the doctrine, nor did the Inquisition, since only they are able to declare whether someone is a heretic or not. Although the Inquisition kept an eye upon the chapter, the Ecclesiarchy demanded action, and the tensions between both grew. The tensions between the Ecclesiarchy and the chapter grew so bad that neither of them wanted to operate together. Priests who dared land upon Lustus, or even fight on the same front, risked to disappear in suspicious ways. Although the Inquisition suspected the chapter of killing priests who tried to convert the people on Lustus, or soldiers among the enlightened ranks, there was never any kind of proof against them. The tensions rose, and at some point, it even seemed that the Ecclesiarchy and the Enlightened would fight one another, only to be interrupted by higher officers. The chapter master of the Enlightened, Brabo Gracchus, had no interest in the conflict between both parties, even though Zarias bore a lot of hatred against the manipulative truths of the Ecclesiarchy. Gracchus refused to yield, but a storm was brewing, and things only grew worse. How Zarias came to the conclusion is unsure. Many believe it to be a trick of the Chaos Gods to get more followers who would strengthen their power, but there is no proof of that. In 369 M36, Zarias issued an edict which he named the Light of Faith. In this edict, he declared the gods of chaos to be one of the many forms of the God Emperor. The God Emperor would split into many personalities when in the warp. Since the Chaos Gods and demons were the only beings present in the Immaterium, they would be some of the forms of the Emperor himself. So Zarias declared praising the Chaos Gods was not heresy. It was just praising the God Emperor and should be allowed. The incursions of demons was one of the many ways the Emperor used to show mankind the truth. The Ecclesiarchy and Inquisition were thus the true enemies of mankind, who upheld the truth and denied humanity the true faith. Zarias declared the Ecclesiarchy and Inquisition heretical and arch-enemy of the Imperium. Why the chapter believed this edict is unknown, but after its declaration, half the chapter turned to the Dark Gods. Although the chapter is split in two, those who believe in the God Emperor as the figure on the Golden Throne and those who put their faith in the Dark Gods, they managed to operate as one. The edict did not affect internal relations in the chapter itself, since faith depended from individual to individual. Many more cults arose, but one cult became dominant within the chapter itself. There were cults that praised one individual god of chaos, like Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle or Slaanesh, but the dominant cult, the Forsaken Zealots, worshipped chaos undivided. The Forsaken Zealots were those Marines who defended the edict with their lives and believed every word in it. Zarias was one of the members of this cult, which was why their influence was so great. The cult became more powerful when the captain of the 8th Company, Pontus Dira, became chapter master after the death of Gracchus in 421 M46. Slain by an Orc war boss, Gracchus died without being able to express his concern about the edict and the way the chapter was going. Dira and his company were member of the Forsaken Zealots cult, which now controlled many important posts within the chapter. Slowly but surely, the cult took over the Enlightened chapter from within, something the Inquisition didn't agree with, but they couldn't do more for the moment other than watch. Zarias and Dira agreed to make the chapter bigger, with their eye upon a coming conflict between the chapter and the Ecclesiarchy. They started to recruit more men and make their armoury larger. In 983 M36, the chapter had grown to a size of 2,500 battle-ready Marines, and there would be many more to come. In 243 M37, the chapter was double this strength. This was the moment Zarias had waited for. With the chapter this big and under the Forsaken Zealots' control, the time had come to declare war upon the Ecclesiarchy. But Zarias was wrong. War had already come to Lustus. The Inquisition and Ecclesiarchy had reported the chapter to the High Lords of Terror, and the Enlightened were declared excommunicate traitoris. In 245 M37, a fleet of the Grey Knights and a Sisters of Battle contingent set course to Lustus to cleanse the planet and destroy the chapter. The monastery would be razed and the planetary populace would be slaughtered. But Zarias was aware of the coming threat. His agents had informed him of the invasion and preparations had been made. Most of the valuable relics and war gear were already brought to the fleet for an immediate evacuation. When the Inquisition arrived, the transport was still busy, but Zarias realised he had to save time. The defences were organised and the militia armed. A part of the fleet would hide in an asteroid belt and engage the foe in the flank. But Zarias was cunning. Those who were suspicious about the edict and still loyal to the ideas of the Ecclesiarchy were sent to the front lines, where a certain death awaited them. After 5 days, the Inquisitorial fleet arrived and war began. The Enlightened were able to hold up the Inquisitorial forces and their Sisters of Battle for 3 full days. It costed them their chapter master and almost 2/3 of their forces, but eventually they managed to escape and fled into the Eye of Terror. When in the Eye of Terror, Zarias led the chapter to a planet named Raxt. In Imperial records, it was known as the Ashen Planet due to the black sand that covered the world's surface. The chapter renamed themselves the Forsaken Zealots, and most Marines now adopted Chaos Undivided as their masters. Even now, there are small war bands which follow one specific Chaos god, but Zarias knows how to use them all.